Yeah, I would say a great game. It's hard to play offensive football earlier in the season. I've been telling you guys the last couple of weeks, when you start the season, defenses are ahead of the offenses, and now we're in this era where these players, because of the collective bargaining agreement, they're going to be practicing less, playing in the preseason less, and you could see it. You could see that the defense was 1 or 2 steps ahead of the offense. It suffered in the running game. Neither team could have any type of running game, and that's what we'll typically see for the first couple of weeks of the season. But the defense in Green Bay, I guarantee you the Packers fans, they weren't disappointed. No. They thought it was a masterpiece. I don't remember ever seeing Aaron Rodgers have that type of defensive support. And if they're going to play football that way, the Packers are going to have a chance to win a lot of games. We've been saying this for years. If they can run the ball, they can play some defense, and they got that with Mike Pettin. The money that they spent this offseason, the draft capital that they spent on their safeties and on their corners is paying dividends, and we could see it last night. So the Packers didn't have to rely on a huge comeback by Aaron Rodgers, a Hail Mary late in the game, trying to win 42-38. No. This is a classic NFC North battle, and the Packers showed the defense that we hadn't seen for a long time. So for me, I thought it was a masterpiece by Mike Pettin and that defensive staff.
I had 2 major takeaways from last night's game. On the Packers side of things, my takeaway is exactly what Aaron Rodgers was when he talked on the field after the game, when he said, "We've got a defense." And then they asked him another question, and he just repeated the same thing. We've got a defense. The Packers' investments on defense, as you mentioned, first-round pick Kenny Clark from a few years ago, first-round pick Jair Alexander, first-round pick Savage, the safety. All those guys showed up in large part. Their 2 big offseason acquisitions, the 2 Smiths, Preston and Zadarius, they combined for 2.5 sacks on the game. Those 5 players, first-round picks, big money acquisitions in the offseason, all showed up, and they bailed out a Packers offense that was more than rusty, a Packers offense that was bad. Aaron Rodgers, the plan was for him to play a little in the preseason, but before one preseason game, his back tightened up.
Yep.
Another preseason game, they have the bad field in Canada, so all of a sudden, they seemed like they were late getting plays in. The play clock was winding down a lot on them. They had to delay a game. They used some timeouts. They just looked rusty in that regard. And on the other side of the ball, it's only 1 week, but the Bears' quarterback problem appears to be real and appears to be concerning. On that final drive of the game, there were 2 plays that were significant, the final real drive for the Bears, and it would concern me if I were a Bears fan which one surprised me. There was a 3rd and 10 that Mitch Trubisky delivered a good pass. The Packers dropped 8 in coverage. He found the weak spot in the zone, gets a first down. That play surprised me. The interception he threw in the end zone did not surprise me. I think a lot of people saw watching that drive waiting for the mistake to happen because Trubisky was flirting with disaster all game long with a few dropped picks. So for the Bears, the defense looked dominant once again, but the offense could get nothing going on the ground or in the air.
To me, the Bears don't have a quarterback problem. The Bears have a situation like all the great defensive teams that have won Super Bowls. There's going to be some Sundays you're not going to be happy with it. If you go back over the last 20 years, the teams like Baltimore, we saw Seattle, we even saw Denver with the injured Peyton Manning hanging on. If you're going to play dominant defense, you can still win a championship, but there are going to be 5 or 6 Sundays out of that 16-game schedule. You're going to be like, man, this offense, do we have enough productivity? I'm not worried about the quarterback. I'm more worried about the wide receivers. Because it wasn't like they had a whole bunch of guys wide open. They don't have a whole bunch of game changers. So before we start pointing at Trubisky and everything, and when you get in 3rd and long situations, where was he supposed to throw the ball? He had to make a play. He had to force that ball. That wasn't like a mistake by the quarterback. That's what happens when you're down by a touchdown. They couldn't settle for a field goal. You hadn't make any big plays, and you can't depend on these young receivers. So for me, Anthony Morgan, when is he going to step up? And they missed Trey Burton, the tight end. They needed a tight end to be able to affect the middle of the field. So for me, before we start pointing at the quarterback, the coach mentioned it too. If he's supposed to be some offensive genius, he's got to be able to come up with some plays. Tyreek Cohen, he's got to play a bigger role. So let's share in some of this responsibility. He doesn't have the best group of skilled guys. So this is a defensive-oriented team. Let's not forget that. That's where all their resources are. But you're going to have some Sundays. You're like, I remember talking to Ray Lewis. He was like, man, can you guys win a Super Bowl? Yeah.
We'll hold them to 3 points. I guess the only pushback I would give on that is that Ravens team, the Bucs team. You mentioned the Broncos team, pardon me, with Peyton when he was clearly not himself. Those teams didn't go into the season believing, maybe the Broncos team did, we could have a great player at quarterback. They knew they were going to have to work around the quarterback. The Bears, listening to them this offseason, listening to Nagy, listening to the people covering the team in Chicago, had really high expectations for Mitch Trubisky. Now, 1 week, you shouldn't overreact to it, even though everyone's going to overreact to every game this weekend. But the Bears don't want Mitch Trubisky to have to be Trent Dilfer. They want Mitch Trubisky to be a franchise quarterback on a team that has
I think he has more talent than those other guys.
Right.
Besides Russell Wilson, on the defensive-oriented teams, he's got more arm talent than Flacco, more talent than the person that you mentioned. So the Bears, let's not forget how they're trying to win. They're not trying to win by dropping the quarterback back 40 times. So, like Coach Mangini said yesterday, why is everybody complaining the guy's slow? They don't have a whole bunch of weapons. Well,
that's the other. They called 52 pass plays to 13 run plays. That's a problem for them because that is not a recipe for Chicago to succeed in a game that was a one-score game the entire time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.